Aloha. Thank you for joining us for the second Hawaii Food and Wine Festival virtual event in our new series, HMAA Presents Talk Story and Pau Hana with HFWF. Tonight, we will explore why women in the culinary industry are still fighting an uphill battle in this male-dominated field. We welcome everybody to be part of the conversation about how to empower women in not only the culinary industry, but all professions and industries across the globe. And a special thank you to our presenting sponsor, HMAA. I know Arnie and Joji Baptiste are watching tonight, and thank you to our co-host, Les Dames Escoffier Hawaii chapter, and the president, Kristen Jackson. I always wanted to give recognition to a few of the female powerhouse chefs and restaurateurs in our community, so I'm going to do that right now. There are a few who are joining us tonight. Claire Bobo, Island Time Gourmet, Karen Christensen, Mama's Fish House, Deanna Cornelius, Happy Bento, Bonnie Davis, Fat Chicks Burger, Abby Ferreira, Star Noodle, Jan Horry, Hawaiian Pie Company, Judy Lappert, St. Clair from Lappert's Ice Cream, Stephanie Leonard, Sprout Sandwich Shop, Denise Luke, 12th Avenue Grill, Robin Mai'i from FET, Maris Manzano from Verde, Hawaii, Delia Romano from Outrigger Reef, Waikiki Beach, Kaleo Schneider from Buzz's Steakhouse, Miley Sangora from Miley's Bistro, Maria Short from Short and Sweet Bakery, and So Wood from Kikori Whiskey. Mahalo to all of you for being with us tonight and for continuing the fight to fight your way through the glass ceiling. We were inspired by Joanna James' award-winning and thought-provoking documentary, A Fine Line, which I hope all of you had a chance to watch. We are pleased to have Joanna James, the creator, producer, and director of the film, with us this evening. In our talk story, we'll hear Joanna speak about the inspiration for the documentary. Then we'll try to answer the question, why are less than 7% of head chefs and restaurant owners women? Our panel of amazing women leaders in their fields are all part of the culinary industry. We are thrilled to hear from female chefs, CEOs, journalists, winemakers, and artists about their experiences as women in this industry and how barriers and obstacles have affected them. But first, we'll open with a song from songwriter and ukulele player, Taimane, and a virtual wine tasting by one of our panelists, Clarice Turner, president of Joseph Phelps Vineyards. After the panel discussion, stay tuned for more music from Taimane, which is being brought to you in partnership with Outrigger Resorts Kanikapila Music Jam. Mahalo to all of you for supporting our community by purchasing a ticket to tonight's event. All of the proceeds will benefit the featured musician, who many of them are out of work, and the Kukua Ag and Culinary Fund, which supports the agriculture, culinary, and hospitality industries in Hawaii that have been impacted by COVID-19. Our next virtual cook and drink along with HFWF will be on October 1st. MW chefs Michelle and Wade will be cooking up a seafood boil with master sommelier Chuck Faria. Tickets are limited, so sign up now to get your seafood kit and exclusive wine pairing. And finally, after a long waiting game, we are excited to announce that tickets for the 2020 Hawaii Food and Wine Festival will be on sale Saturday. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, we considered canceling our events, but we have decided to proceed because our local restaurants, as well as our visitor industry and other small businesses, need your support to survive. The format this year has been pivoted to prioritize everyone's safety and accommodate all government guidelines at the time of the events. Stay tuned for updates from our newsletter and our social media. Lastly, be sure to check out our new digital content platform, hashilife.com, which features stories about food and culture, as well as the stories behind the many chefs, winemakers, mixologists, and others in our community who come together year after year to make our festival possible. Now let's get things started with the beautiful music from tonight's featured artist, Taimane. Mahalo and enjoy.
Aloha! Mahalo. See you guys at the Pau Hana.
Thank you very much, Tamane. That was awesome, as always. Mahalo. Thank you, ladies. Once again, Tamane is the 2019 Naho Kuhanohano Award Favorite Entertainer of the Year. So it's really awesome that she's here with us. And we know she's been really busy on lockdown. She's actually recording a new album. Okay, that was too much information. But, thank you very much once again. And Tamane will be joining us again very soon. So stay tuned after the panel for more tunes from Taiwan. Let me introduce myself. My name is Devin Ekoba. I am the morning show host for the Rise and Drive, weekdays on 94.7 Kumu. So yes, I'm supposed to probably be sleeping right about now, but I couldn't wait to be on this panel because we have such a lineup for you today. Well, tonight for our panelists. I'm going to be the moderator, and so I will be stepping aside as much as I can to make sure that we get the information here that you all joined in to see. I hope that you picked up a bottle of Joseph Phelps Vineyards wine to enjoy this evening, because we got one of the varietals here. Right here, actually. The selections were especially curated by Joseph Phelps Vineyards President Clarice Turner, and she'll be leading us through a virtual wine tasting. So Clarice, thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you. Wow, that was really lovely music. What a way to begin. And Denise, you made me miss Hawaii more than I already do miss it by describing all the wonderful restaurants and many, many memories that I have of such a special place. So thank you very much, Devin. I have the great pleasure of being president of Joseph Phelps Vineyards. We have been around in Napa Valley and in Sonoma for quite some time. Joe started us out in Napa Valley in 1973, and our first vintage was in 1974. So very special place, 47 years into it, and making amazing wines. I would like to start out, and I'm gonna toggle back and forth here because you can't always see my background quite well enough. This is our, oh boy, hang on, let me just get it in the light. There we go, close. This is our 2017 Freestone Vineyards. And this wine comes from Sonoma County. There we go, we get no background, that helps. And sorry, just one second. There we go, you can see the beautiful vineyards on the label. It's called Freestone Vineyards, and it's near the little hamlet of Freestone in West Sonoma County. It is about 6 miles from the Pacific Ocean. So we get a wonderful marine influence in these vineyards. And we have very rich, fossil-rich soils that are called gold-rich soils. They're a very special place to grow the rather finicky Pinot Noir grape. It is temperamental and lovely when it's right. We also grow Chardonnay grapes out in Sonoma Coast, and our wines from that area are very Burgundian in style. They're a bit lighter than you might experience in some of the West Coast Pinot Noirs, nuanced and very, very lovely and soft. Joe fell in love with Burgundy when he visited Europe many, many years ago. And he tried a lot of places to grow Pinot Noir and buy it from different famous growers. And ultimately, he searched until he found the best spot he could find. And I actually lived out there at the time when he was planting the vineyards. And I thought whoever would plant in that fog was crazy. But actually, he was very, very wise. And the grapes grow amazingly out there. So the Pinot Noir, if you've got a chance to pour a glass, I hope you can join me. If you give it a nice nose, you will get some very nice red licorice and dried rose petals and potpourri, maybe a little bit of tree bark on the nose, very ripe red and black fruits, really complex layers going on in this wine. A little bit of spice notes of maybe cinnamon stick and a bit of clove, and some perfume fruit in the mouth as you take a taste. Very soft tannins. It's a very lovely, pretty wine with great freshness and a nice long finish on the palate. You also get a little bit of minerality from the salinity that we get in the climate out there. So please come and visit the little hamlet of Freestone. It's really beautiful. We aren't open to the public out there, but there's the best bakery in the county right beside us, and you can enjoy our wines out at the ocean also. It's very, very close to the winery. So that's our first wine for this evening, 2017 Freestone Vineyards from our Quarter Moon and Pastoral Vineyards. So the second wine this evening is our Napa Valley Cabernet. Sorry, let me get it just right there in the light. This is a 2016, and this wine is a stunning wine. It is from grapes grown on vineyards all over Napa Valley, and some of those that you saw in back of me earlier are where the grapes come from. We pick grapes from all over our estate vineyards in Napa Valley to make both our Cabernet and our Insignia that we'll taste next. So this season was actually pretty close to a perfect season. It was cooler than most seasons, which really allowed the flavors to develop nicely in the wines that year. So it is aged in oak for 18 months, and that's about half French oak and half 1 to 2 year old French and American oak, which is unique. And not many wineries do that in Napa Valley in terms of using American oak. It does add a nice characteristic to the wine. It has concentrated, dense black fruit with anise and roasted coffee, ripe blueberries and cedar box, and a little bit of graphite, which is very characteristic of some of our vineyards and the soils that they're growing in. We have a lot of volcanic influence in our soils in Napa Valley. It finishes with a creamy texture and a long, luscious mouthfeel with baking spices and sweet vanilla and sweet fig notes. So let's have a nose of this. Really lovely, dense black fruits, some ripe blueberries in there and a little bit of cedar, and a taste. Delicious. I'm envisioning a nice steak alongside this wine, and maybe one of Roy's restaurants that I've missed so much. The varietals in this wine, it's 86% Cabernet, 7% Merlot, 3% Petit Verdot, 2% Malbec, and 2% Cabernet Franc. So all of those are contributing to just beautiful, beautiful wine. So moving on to our next wine. This is our flagship, Insignia. And you can see that we've got a beautiful glass embellishment there for the Insignia bottle. And this is our 2016 Insignia. This wine is a very special, iconic American wine, and it is revered throughout the world as an iconic American wine that began really with Joe's passion for Bordeaux wines and his quest to find the very best grapes in Napa from each vintage. He was the first in Napa Valley to bottle a Bordeaux style red blend. Most people thought at that time that Cabernet was the only way to go, and you really didn't want to put anything else in that bottle. Joe had a different idea, and that he knew that Bordeaux varietals complement each other, and really that it depends on the vintage as far as what sort of a blend is going to make the most beautiful vintage. So he jumped right in, and many people followed him. But he really strove to make the best wine possible every single vintage. Fortunately, he bought and left us with many estate vineyards around Napa Valley. So from north to south and east to west in Napa Valley, the vintage can be quite different depending on the rain and the sun and all of the weather patterns that Mother Nature gives us. And our winemakers have the ability to select from all of these vineyards and truly make the very best wine possible. So we're very proud of this wine. It's elegant, it's very pretty, and it got 99 points from Robert Parker. So we had some quite nice bottles the day that rating came through, and quite a lot of toast going on in our office because we're quite proud of it. So if you nose it, you're going to get a little bit of cocoa powder. Again, the graphite that's very characteristic of our vineyards, some earthy spices. And then if you have a sip, please. It's very elegant, complex, but with a really supple, creamy texture. There's bold tannins for sure, very luscious ripe plums, blackberries, and hints of roasted coffee even, and dark cherry. Has a very long velvety finish. It's still lingering on my palate. It is drinking beautifully now. I poured this at the New York Wine Experience a couple of years ago. It's gorgeous now, and it will age for decades. I was very fortunate at one of our family meetings. I was able to have a taste of our 1974 Insignia, which was the very first vintage we ever bottled. And it was incredible wine and still drinking really, really well. Joe's vision for having a true Bordeaux style blend from Napa Valley has given birth to an iconic wine the world over. And a true story is that he thought of the name Insignia while he was shaving. He had a military background, and Insignia meant a very special thing in the military. And he thought that that was apropos for a very special wine. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed our wines, and please come and visit us at the winery. I know our wines are available in many places in Hawaii, in restaurants and also in shops. So thank you so much.
Mahalo, Clarice. Thank you so much. We're excited to be hearing from Clarice a bit more tonight because she's actually going to be joining us on the panel in a little bit. Now that you're sipping a nice glass of Joseph Phelps Vineyards now, I'd like to do a quick giveaway. So one randomly chosen lucky attendee is going to win a culinary and wine experience at Joseph Phelps Vineyards. And the winner is, I didn't pick it, so don't blame me if you didn't win. I apologize. But we congratulate Dustin Lau. The festival team here, they're very excited in the room here. I don't know, all these intakes of breaths. Anyway, the festival team here will be in touch with you on how to claim your prize, so congratulations. All right, let's get started, shall we? I'm very excited to bring this next person on. We're gonna kick off from hearing from the director and producer of an inspirational film, A Fine Line. Joanna James is here to tell us a bit more about her inspiration and experience in making this documentary, which I truly hope you've all had a chance to see by now. I've seen it. It is amazing filmmaking. Joanna, thank you so much for being here with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Devin. And thank you, Denise, and the whole team with the Hawaii Food and Wine Festival. It's amazing that you're hosting this. And I only wish I could be there in person, of course. I think all of us were thinking that, but there's always next year. So we will, I'm sure all of us will take up another invitation to be there with you all.
Yes, definitely. So, Joanna, what was the inspiration for this? I mean, I know the sort of spine of the story is your mother's experiences of being a chef, being a restaurant owner and stuff. But was that what it was? You saw her in the kitchen, you saw her working, and you said, I have to film this.
No, not at all. I don't mean not at all, but really what it was wanting to honor my mom, you know, and not even through necessarily a film. That's what it ultimately ended up being, but just I think paying tribute to who she was to accomplish what she did as a working mother, as a single mother. You know, I was raised in the restaurant right by her side. So I saw all the hard work and sacrifice and what it took for her to do, you know, to become a boss, an owner, to, you know, end up having the restaurant for 33 years now and this strong following. It's because she gave it her whole heart and soul. And so I think just I wanted to pay tribute to that. And then what happened was I became a working mom. So, you know, it's really funny. Now I have 3 little ones, but when I started making this film, I just got pregnant. And I had no idea that, you know, what was to unfold, but you know, it was a matter of commitment and love for filmmaking, and just wanting to you know, wanting to really tell the story now, not only of my mother, but really what she represented, which was what it takes for all working women, and especially working mothers, to try to, you know, get ahead and do what they love and feel that they have a talent and gift for, which is not an easy thing to do.
How did you track down the various stories that came about? Because I mean, there was your mother, but my gosh, the breadth of chefs that you got to participate in this was quite vast. So how did those people come into it?
Well, it's great to be on this panel with Elizabeth Faulkner, because she was literally one of the first people, chefs that we spoke with. And it was great because Elizabeth ended up being a sounding board and really opened our eyes and gave us even greater perspective. But you know, there were a lot of amazing women chefs and restaurateurs to speak with, even at that time, 2014, when the conversation wasn't being had as much. Yes, of course, I'm sure if you talk to Elizabeth, she was sick of answering the questions. But at the same time, if you go back in time, you know, this is now 6 years that I started making this film, there really wasn't much programming specifically about women chefs and restaurateurs. And so, you know, we thought the conversation was so important because everyone found it so shocking that less than 7% of head chefs and restaurant owners were women, and especially in an industry, or I should say, not the industry side of it, but just this profession that, you know, everyone imagined women would be the central role in the kitchen, and it wasn't the case professionally. So, so it was a matter of, for us, trying to figure out whose stories seamlessly intertwined with my mother's as well, because she was really the central narrative to make a lot of these issues very personal. And so, and also at the time, of course, budget and travel restrictions in terms of what we could do, or chef schedules. So, but I was really happy with who wanted to come on board and share their insight, because this film really came to life hearing from all these incredible women chefs.
Well, I think one of the most shocking things for me was hearing about these stories of these women who are chefs. I mean, they're professionals. And yet, you know, they're talking about being trapped in a walk-in freezer, and people turn off the lights and think that it's funny. That kind of stuff would go on in a professional atmosphere was just amazing to me. And the fact that the women chefs were like, yeah, it happens. It happens. I've had to deal with it. It was a, yeah, it made me feel really bad to be a guy, actually, to be a male. But I'm glad that the story was told, and I'm glad that it was told in their own words. How would you able to work that balance out? Because, you know, I mean, there's this video of your mom, and she's telling people I love you, and then the next minute she's telling you, okay, get on the line and hurry up and watch out all this stuff, and then you're hearing all these disturbing stories of women who are just trying to make their way and being blocked at every turn. how were you able to make that balance? What was the thing that sort of guided you through that?
Well, I think, having that all access lens in terms of my mother was really important, because the viewers could see what it really is like to an extent to be a woman in the kitchen, let alone running your own restaurant. And then to, get to hear from these incredible women who work their way up. I think that's what was so important for me, is not just to show them now at the highest pinnacle of their success, but hearing from them as to what each one individually had to do to get to where she is today. And the thing is that I also think it's so important to connect it to today. The fact that what we explored in the film is ever more relevant today. All those underlying issues, not just about harassment, like you mentioned, which was like so, it was all over. It was everywhere. Every chef that I interviewed had some experience that was absurd and just so indignified, but they went through it, and it's like, that's what we went through. And today, thankfully, I think it's a lot better. But if we peel it back and talk about some of the other issues that are really going to make a big difference to this whole conversation, it's things that COVID has exposed, but that have always been there, and that we're finally forced to deal with. And I think that's what's going to make the difference, is what restaurateurs and chefs do today, this day of reckoning, to deal with it, because now everyone's feeling it, not just women. And so I think, but the crazy part is now everyone's realizing, well, this is what women were dealing with, forever. It's like, having to deal with childcare, having to deal with, am I going to have a job, job security if you have to go pick up your child from school, all these fair and decent wage, all these issues. And so, I'm just glad that the conversations are being stared at us in the face today, because until these changes happen, there's not going to be career advancement.
Okay. Joanna, if you could help me out with one thing, I did want to ask you, from a personal level, because your mother talked about, I'm a single mom, I was at the restaurant all day and all night, and she feels like, if I remember correctly, she feels like you and your brother were sort of, you sort of had to grow up in the restaurant, right? That you missed something, that she was a good mother, but there was stuff that was just needed to get done because she was the one who was in charge of the restaurant. From your perspective, how do you feel your childhood was? What was it like for you?
Well, this is so important. I'm glad you bring this up, because especially a lot of the viewers, if they are working parents, not just mothers, but fathers also, we created the MAP Impact campaign, and that is to empower women to lead. And so over the course of the past 2 years, when even before releasing the film this past February, before COVID, we would go into communities nationwide, small towns or big cities, whether it was Chicago and New York City, or smaller towns in Michigan and Vermont, and recognize women who never got necessarily the accolades and press that they deserved, but who were rock stars in their communities. And the greatest part of that for me, as the filmmaker, but also as a daughter of a woman in this industry, was hearing from these women up close, in person, and having them say to me, thank you for making this film. Thank you for sharing our stories, because it was one and the same, that story. And it all came down to that, what you just said, is that, the guilt or the questions of, do my kids get it? What I went through, what I had to go through, what I thought I was doing to make a better life for all of us, what I felt I had to do for myself as a working woman. And so, I always say, number one, to be raised in a restaurant, let alone to even just have an entry-level job in a restaurant, is going to pave the way for you the rest of your life. So for me, it was never a drawback. I loved being there. And I was really lucky that I had my grandparents, to raise me the whole time. And, my mom made it work. She was a rock star how she did it. You know, now that I'm trying to figure out the same way, I get it. Like, she made it happen. She never, I don't remember her not being there necessarily for things, because she somehow left the restaurant, came to a basketball game, even if she didn't stay for the whole game. She came for however long she could, went back to work. You know, prom, it was going to the restaurant for pictures, not our backyard. So it's just, you figure out how to make it work, and she did. And yeah, and obviously I made a movie on her, so I don't hold anything against her.
We're going to wrap up in just a second, but I have to know, what's your mom doing now?
Well, right now she's sleeping. I'm wondering
what's going on with her mom, because I so want to see her mom. That's all I did. After I saw this film, I said, I have to go to wherever this lady is and go meet her.
Yeah, well, that's like her greatest joy, is getting a lot of people from literally all across the country, even international, because we did international film festivals. And it was like such a shock to her when people would come in and say, I just want to hug you. And she's like, oh my God. So she misses the hugs, obviously, right now during COVID. Her, like so many other small business owners, are really trying to figure out how to sustain themselves and keep it all afloat right now. I think it's really important to mention that 1 out of 6 restaurant owners have closed down permanently. 100,000 restaurants, independent restaurants, have closed down. So, you know, it's whatever support we can give. That's so important, because they are the backbone to our communities, you know, and my mom, like many, is just still trying to do whatever she can, feeding frontline workers, feeding food insecure communities, and then of course, you know, being responsible within her communities. So, but she's doing great otherwise, and she was happy to hear I was going to be in Hawaii virtually. So, and she was too, obviously.
Got all these grandkids to take care of and feed, so that's awesome. Joanna, thank you so much for sharing this amazing story. I hope to see it on Netflix and Hulu and all the different little ways that people get to watch this film and be transformed by it, and really learn a lot about what it's like to be not only a woman chef, but a woman restaurant owner, and everything that they go through while they do this. So thank you so much, Joanna, for a fine line. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so I know you're sitting on the panel too, so sit tight. We're gonna be with Joanna in just a second. So why don't we get started? The amazing panel of female culinary leaders will share their thoughts about the struggles women continue to encounter in balancing life in and outside of the kitchen. And at the end, we'll have time for our panelists to answer questions. So be sure to use the Q&A function to write in your questions or a particular speaker. Okay, I'm going to start by having each of the chefs introduce themselves. Please say your name, your title, and affiliation, and please let us know where you're dialing in from and how you're doing with both COVID and the fires in California, if you're in California, because you know that some of this is affecting you. So Elizabeth, can we start with you?
Sure. Hey, my name is Elizabeth Faulkner. People know me mostly from my San Francisco days, but I lived in New York for the last 8 years, and now I just moved back to Los Angeles. And I love to cycle, and I've been trying to not do that with the fires going on. So, but I saw blue skies today, so that's good news.
Very nice. Thank you very much. Elizabeth Blau.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Blau, and I am calling in from Las Vegas. Luckily, we no longer have the smoke from the fires, but we are definitely struggling as a community. Las Vegas is a city based on tourism, much like Hawaii, and so most of it has evaporated. So we are very busy here lobbying our local and federal politicians to try and get some help.
Okay, thank you very much. Joanna James. We have to have you introduce yourself again. Sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. Hi, I'm Joanna James, also known as Val's daughter, since many of you have watched this movie, and a filmmaker, mom, wife, and I live I was in New York. Now I'm in Connecticut. I don't know how I feel about that, saying it out loud, but I do like having a backyard with 3 kids since we were in lockdown. Anyways, great to be here, and I look forward to hearing from everyone.
Next, Jackie Lau. Jackie.
Aloha, Jackie Lau, here in Hawaii, and super excited to be on this panel tonight.
She has a really long list of stuff that she does, so that's why she
Chef.
love to get through it. You're next. Chef Nikki?
Hi, I'm calling in from LA, and I am the chef of Napa, well, one of the chefs. We are doing fairly decently regarding the fire situation. I have family that live close to where the fires are, a little bit too close for comfort. But we're hoping that next month we're going to put out a special California bento to raise money to help victims of the fires.
Thank you very much. Clarice.
Sorry. Hi, everyone. Clarice Turner again, president of Joseph Phelps Vineyards. I do live in Northern California. Fires were north of us, east of us, west of us, and south of us. And happy to say that most of those are out and the smoke has blown farther east. I was talking to someone in Denver, Colorado today who was telling me there was smoke. My family's been in Northern California for quite some time. I'm 9th generation. My family came here from Spain a long, long time ago, and it is my favorite place, one of my favorite places in the world. I do love Hawaii too, so it's a pleasure to be here.
And last but not least, Janice. Thank you for joining.
Hey, it's great to be here. I'm zooming in from Los Angeles. The fires, there's one not that far from us, about a half an hour away. So it's been really hazy and smoky and hot and missing the blue skies of Hawaii. For those who don't know me, I'm a longtime, 3rd decade as a food and travel journalist. I wrote the cookbook, The New Cuisine of Hawaii, that really, my goal was to bring attention to the Hawaii regional cuisine chefs who started when the time of new American cooking was coming, or modern American cooking, came together as a group, and they started cooking with local ingredients, which actually was a rarity back then. They were flying in fish from England and Dover sole and so forth. And then all of a sudden there were chefs who were spearing fish and climbing trees and wow. So how exciting for me to be a mainland writer who got to document the story for nationally and internationally. And I also was on the Big Island for 13 years, hosting an international food and wine event, the Cuisines of the Sun. And it was great bringing all these superstar chefs to Hawaii, get to meet the superstar chefs of Hawaii. And I guess I've been to Hawaii over 100 times and like to think of myself as a semi-kama'aina. So thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Janice, as you told that story, I was having visions of Alan Wong and Roy Yamaguchi in trees. I appreciate that image. We're going to start with the panel questions. Thank you once again, ladies, for joining us. I'm honored to be here with you moderating this panel. Now, as Joanna's film A Fine Line details, less than 7% of head chefs and restaurant owners are women, when traditionally women have always held the central role in the kitchen. Jackie, I'd like to ask you, you've held many positions in restaurants for more than 30 years now, working your way up to executive chef and leading roles. What are some of the struggles and obstacles you faced as a woman in the kitchen that differed from your male counterparts? And do you see that it's changed over time?
I first started off always wanting to be in the kitchen. And my parents told me that when I was 4, I told them I wanted to be a chef. So I was very determined that this was what I was going to be doing when I was old enough to start working. And, there are quite a few hurdles that you have to go over and get through. And, a lot of it, for as many of those hurdles, I would say there's been just as many great experiences that I've had just as well. When I first moved to Hawaii, you could not really find very many women in the kitchen. And I remember applying for a job when I first got here, and you know, I applied as a line cook, and the guy was like, "You want to be a hostess?" And I was like, "No, a line cook." And he's like, "Hostess?" And I'm like, "See those people? That's what I do." It was hard, and I had a hard time, and you know, I finally got a job, and you know, I remember telling the chef that I wanted to work, you know, on the hotline, and he needed a broiler person, and I said, "Hey, I can do that." And he told me, and I will never forget this, he told me, "You can't work the hotline because women belong with lettuce." And I was like, "What?" And it just stuck with me. I couldn't believe that, you know, he actually said it. And I quickly gave my notice. But you know, that was kind of the way it was back then. And I see things are changing nowadays, you know, and I'm happy that it's changing, that people are more aware. But luckily I found a home, and, you know, my home was at Roy's, and, you know, it was a different environment. Roy was just starting out. I was one of the opening cooks at his restaurant. And, you know, I worked hard, and I worked my way up. And one day Roy says, you know, "I'm going to make you the chef." And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, he told me that, you know, I had two things against me. One was my age, because I was very young. And the other one was that I was a woman. And he said, "Don't ever tell anybody how old you are." And, you know, I remember thinking, like, you know, people just have to get over this. And again, it was never, I never really thought about it, but there was plenty of times I would be out at events. And, you know, I remember one time I was in Singapore, and I was doing a walkthrough at a big gala event, and I was walking up to the chefs that were gathered, and the chef of the hotel yelled down the hallway, "Hey, little girl in the pink shoes, are you lost?" And I was like, "Okay, no, I'm with you guys." Every time one of those things happened, I always felt like I was gonna prove that I could do the job, even more so. And that's kind of how I've been managing all of these years. And I appreciate all the people who have always been so supportive of me. And there's more supportive people than there are the other people. And I feel like, you know, the other people that like to, you know, they're running the ship. They're the ones that are showing the rest of their staff that it's okay to behave like that. And it's not, you know. I remember one time I had a chef ask me if it would kill me for me to kiss their ass. And I said, and he said it in front of everybody. And so I turned around and said, "Well, yes, it would." And, you know, I think that the more that we stand up and say, "No, that's not okay," is makes it more aware to everyone else that, you know, you can't act like that. And women can do the job better, if not as well as the men in the kitchen.
Very much, Jackie. That was great. The next question is for Nikki Nakayama from Naka. After training for many years to learn the art of sushi techniques, you took a risk opening Naka in 2011 with the idea to bring kaiseki to Los Angeles. What challenges and barriers to entry do you feel that you faced more because of your gender than because of your skill?
Before I get to that question, I wanted to comment on Jacqueline's comments about how, just in general, like, I think the overall feeling is it's always okay for your mother to cook, but it's not okay for her to work in a kitchen, which is really ironic, because I think the best cuisines and the best memories of food and all the famous male chefs have always quoted their mothers or their grandmothers for being the best influences in their lives. So I hope that from now on, they'll remember that and welcome more women in the kitchen, knowing that women can do food that is heartwarming and delicious and professional. So that was just I'm sorry. I just wanted to say, like, you know, it was like the best food came from the women in our lives. So I think that should be a continuing tradition. But to answer your question, one of the things that I found really difficult is I think that visually people have ideas of what a Japanese chef, especially a sushi chef, looks like. And more often than not, I didn't really fit the mold. I think when people, because sushi in general is a very sort of interactive experience with sushi chefs, I think there's just a very standardized tradition of what people expect how sushi chefs should be. So that said, when I was going into the sushi world, it was really hard for me to sort of even break the barriers and then to prove myself to other people. But when I decided to open in Naka, I was really happy in that kaiseki doesn't really have isn't popular in the way that sushi is. So most people don't know what a kaiseki chef looks like. So for opening at Naka, I felt that the discrimination part was a lot less, and I didn't anticipate people to sort of judge me in the way that they judged me for sushi. So I feel like that has really helped. And I'm really proud and honored to say that I think 80% of the people in our kitchen are all women.
You were mentioning that yesterday too. I was very
this is like, it's so funny because I was thinking, like, I don't really know how to relate anymore to what a male dominated kitchen feels like, because I feel that the past, 15 years, all the kitchens that I run have been mostly women, and it's been just really supportive environment. I think women in the kitchen are wonderful at what we do, in that we're very communicative, and we also don't have problems asking each other nicely. I think we all recognize that we must all respect each other as human beings first before we are anything else. And I think it's great because a lot of the work that we do at Naka is very detailed and very small and very there's a lot of little parts, and I feel that both the men and the women that we have in the kitchen they do it equally well. So there is no one gender better than the other for this job.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. And I appreciated what you were saying about female chefs being more nurturing in the kitchen, because I've worked at restaurants before where we've had male chefs who are just terrifying.
I think I'm scary too.
You're scared that they're going to yell at you and kick you out of the kitchen, and then you work with a female chef, and she's like watching Joanna's mom in action in the film. She's tough and she drives you, but at the same time she reaches out and gives people hugs and sees if they're okay and does those kind of things, and it's just a night and day.
I mean, overall with food, it's about hospitality, and there's so much of it is about sharing something to bring joy to others. And when the environment is conducive to that, where everybody who's working feels that way, it really translates.
Yeah, that's very cool. Thank you so much, Chef Nikki. I appreciate it. Now, unfortunately, it's not only chefs and sous chefs and other positions in the kitchen who are being affected by gender discrimination. So I'd like to pivot just a little bit and speak to Clarice from Joseph Phelps Vineyards. Women are also greatly underrepresented in the wine industry. So what are the steps that the wine and hospitality industries need to take to address some of the inequalities that females are grappling with?
Quite a lot of opinions on this topic, and I've been heavily engaged in it for a very long time. First of all, as I hear the chefs speaking about their experiences, it brings back a lot of memories for me. I worked in just about every job you could name in restaurant and hospitality except chef. And it was chefs who encouraged me to go on in my career, and I never ever even thought about really going to college. The developmental opportunities were amazing because there's so much to do and so much to learn. So I'm grateful to the great industry that I grew up in, and it led me to wine. My family's been in wine since the mid 1800s. It's, been a lovely road and not an easy one. To the points that were made earlier, I learned a ton, and there was a lot of fear, honestly, in many of those jobs. In the broader industry, both in food and in wine, one of the things that I've seen help tremendously is advocacy groups. And I've been directly involved in boards and committees and things like that throughout my career, with Women's Food Service Forum, Roundtable for Women, Women of the Vine and Spirits. These groups play a really pivotal role in that they support efforts and they really tap the larger well-funded companies to help develop infrastructure and programming that enables development and deliberately puts in infrastructure that can surface opportunities for growth and development and mentorship and sponsorship that give people opportunities to learn and grow. One of the biggest risks that we face in both industries, restaurant and wine, is that those opportunities are not surfaced. And, just sort of human nature is default to who you know or who you're comfortable with. And this is where these types of infrastructures and tools become very, very important, in that if we don't have them, we will not be able to develop new skills in women or anyone else, or stretch assignments that lead to learning and growth will never be surfaced. So I'm fortunate in my career that I've had great examples of organizations who took this quite seriously. They're certainly far from perfect, but they did care and they were trying to make progress. And that is with PepsiCo. Very early in my career, I had 5 jobs in 10 years and moved every 2 years because I was part of a program that helped to develop well-rounded executives. Something very similar at Starbucks Coffee Company. It's very important as a component of this to guide and create accountability in large organizations and to provide models and tools for smaller companies and independent operators. That's where some of that can come from. And it's very expensive to do these things from the ground up, but the infrastructural component of these can be super important. Accountability, especially important, and transparency is key. And it's not happening fast enough, but we do need to put the bar very high with our expectations and measure progress and not settle for words. We do need results. There are many organizations out there that measure results, like Catalyst and many others that I'm sure you've read reports from them. And we seem to have hit a plateau, which is not okay. And it is through advocacy and support that voices become collective and become heard. I would say also that personally, enabling ourselves and others to bring others along, and that we personally have to mentor and value support groups and spend time on that, and offer opportunities to other women or connect them to opportunities, develop their skills and give them a sounding block to be really visible as the women today are being, as what it's like to be a successful woman, and transparent about what the journey's like. It's, you have good days and bad days, but you do learn, and it's important to share along the way. I've been very fortunate in my career that I've had many, many mentors and still do to this day. And I prioritize time as well to make sure that I'm pulling other people along. Tactically, I would say that just some things I've learned over the years, to insist on diverse interview slates. People will tend to pick the easiest candidates when you have a job opening, and continuing to have the job open and look for a diverse slate so that you're selecting the best person for the job with the best skills is super important. And also considering just removing names from resumes so that they're gender and background blind. And then tracking results, super important, doesn't matter the size of the organization, and ensuring that mentors and sponsors and development opportunities are visible and transparent to everyone in the organization. Again, no matter how big, because you can't measure, you don't get results on what you don't measure. And lastly, there's a book that was very transformational to me called Play Like a Man, Win Like a Woman. It was written several years ago by Gail Evans, who was the first female COO in television. So I've had lots of experience with advocacy. I find it very, very helpful for large organizations as well as small. And I think that that is a major force in how we can influence both business and government in both hospitality and wine industries.
Okay, thank you very much, Clarice. Next up, Elizabeth Faulkner. Elizabeth from Falk, yeah, Productions. I love that name.
That's so funny.
Now,
Yeah, that might have been like a trendy thing for me to do at food and wine festivals for a moment.
now Hollywood has a bad reputation for sexism and gender disparity. As a regular on television cooking competitions and now a host and filmmaker producer, how does the culinary industry compare to what you've seen or experiences for females on and off camera?
Well, I've got to talk about sort of both of my sides of my career right now because, you know, fortunately I had some great female chef role models to look up to in California in the 90s. And I didn't experience a lot of sexism in restaurants, only because I really wanted to work for great people, good people with great reputations. And I would say in the 90s, there were just so many great female chefs in Southern California and Northern California. And I just sort of found my way into that, what felt like a movement to me. And I honestly, I just like put my head down and I worked hard like anybody would in the business at the time to just try to be a badass female chef. And I was the executive chef and CEO of my restaurant projects for 15 years in San Francisco, starting in 1997. I had, you know, 3 restaurants running at one time. And I'm not a very stereotypical, so like a lot of people know me as a pastry chef, but I'm not a very stereotypical pastry chef baker because I equally do savory. And I'm known for pushing boundaries and modernizing food and pastry. And so when I started doing more TV and finding a wider audience on food television, I could show off my avant-garde style. And I mean, you know, like some of the guys I would compete with were, you know, the male when I say the guys, the male pastry chefs would be more about fondant and flowers than me. And I feel like oftentimes the TV and media seem to always try to group me into that old-fashioned pink pastry box that I have I've always tried to have to explain that I'm not, that's actually not who I am at all.
It really doesn't seem like
What's that?
It really doesn't seem like your style.
Like we know that now, but it was you know, I'm trying to tell, there was a learning curve for everybody. And it's still kind of a struggle on food television for me. Because I will always get stereotyped as like, oh, she's a great pastry chef. And anyway, but also as a food competitor, because I've done a lot of those cooking competition shows, I'd sometimes be called, you know, and it's like not even just edited out, but like a witch or a sorceress or a talented young lady in my 40s. And I would be, it wasn't always totally condescending, but it was like, why can't somebody just say you're a talented chef? Like, you know, just that used to make me kind of crazy. And I also feel like the problem is that sometimes food on food television is behind the times. So a lot of the shows, on a lot of the shows, people make food that's frankly kind of dumbed down or simplified or Americanized. And the guys that I always see are, I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of them make a big deal about whatever they're cooking. And that's, I mean, that's true in the restaurant world and in the TV world. I think the problem is that men and women get pigeonholed and typecast into cooking television series. If you think about it, male chefs are on TV are usually traveling. They're called the experts, and they are cooking or grilling or barbecuing. And usually they have restaurant careers, and now they have TV shows. And female chefs are often cooking at a home kitchen or a home kitchen set, cooking for a family. They have to make things quick and simple and even more dumbed down or on a budget. and they're not actually often chefs. And if they are chefs, they get to cook their ethnic cuisine. And the only exception I can think about at the current time is Alex Gurnishelli, because Alex cooks her food, and but this is a phenomenon to me. And when you think about it, this has been driving me crazy, because like in sort of my climax of my restaurant career, there were at least 6 male Iron Chefs, and there was only allowed to be 1. And so, you know, yeah, that exists in Hollywood big time, because people still, it's just behind the times. I've written the business plans for all my projects. I've raised a lot of capital independently for each project, SBA loans, friends, family, not some backer with deep pockets. I don't know why I never got those kind of deals, but I'm not uncommon in that situation. You know, not having somebody with deep pockets made my restaurant career very challenging. The last big project I did in San Francisco suffered because it was behind schedule. It opened behind schedule, over budget, and opened in 2008, which was, you know, obviously the great economic fallout. I moved to New York. I opened a couple other restaurants just as a chef. And when I left the last one on the Upper West Side, the male chef who took my place got $20,000 more than me and was fired for drug abuse. So that's the kind of shit that we deal with on a daily basis. I'm now back in LA, where I grew up, and hopefully I can get more TV and food TV and film projects and other things going on here. But all I have to say is, like, whether it's a restaurant project or a series or a film, it continues to be more challenging for women to be heard, get the projects, get the funding, and get a better deal or a bigger deal. And I don't know why. It seems I have to prove myself all the time, but again, it's because of the stereotyping.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Elizabeth. Next, we'll move on to hoping to kind of figure out the source of the problem a little bit. So we have 2 women on the panel who made it their duty to hold a magnifying glass up to the industries. We'll talk to Janice Wald-Henderson. Janice, you've brought so much national and international publicity to the culinary scene in Hawaii, creating Cuisine of the Sun, that event, and also a new Cuisine of Hawaii cookbook. Now, in all of your global travels and experiences, how does culture and location play into the gender biases when it comes to culinary professionals?
It's a really good question. I think that culture and location play a huge role in gender biases.
Hey, that got me muted.
I feel that what plays out generally in cultures more typically dominated by men, which is pretty much everywhere, you know, plays out equally in professional kitchens. I mean, kitchens are merely a mirror. They're a microcosmic look at society. It would be nice to believe they're different, that gender impact disappears when people are united by culinary passion, but that just isn't the truth. And that said, my travels and decades of experience show that professional kitchens are changing for the better, though. I mean, compared to when I started in my career to now, it's definitely better. I think we all need to pay homage to the culinary professional women who pioneered the change. They face such discrimination, whether being pushed into, okay, you're gonna be a pastry chef because you're a girl, never mind a woman. Or, you know, even when they wanted to work the line, or immediately typecast into a subordinate role, or simply facing sexual harassment. I mean, frankly, as a reporter in my, you know, baby days, I faced so much sexual harassment reporting from kitchens and being around male chefs and restaurateurs. Although, you know, back a few decades, they just didn't call it that. It was just what happened, and you dealt with it. You pretended you didn't understand, you said nothing, you pushed a hand away, and you smiled. That was it. That's the way it was. So when I look back from then to now, and particularly I think in this time of, and what we've talked about in COVID and everything sort of exploding and smashing the kitchen door, breaking the kitchen door, whatever you want to call it, it's time to regroup. And I think with women at the forefront of kitchens, a lot of that automatically goes away.
Okay, thank you very much, Janice. That was a great answer. Next up, Joanna. Joanna, what was the most surprising thing you discovered while making this film? And then if you were to do a reunion or a part 2, which would be really great, in 5 or 10 years, what do you hope to see?
Well, there was so many surprises when I first started out making this film. One of them, which I slightly mentioned, is the fact that when you looked at programming that existed then, there really wasn't much on women chefs and restaurateurs, you know, and even though the discussion points were there, connecting the importance of food, you know, the food systems to everything about life. And you know, so Nikki, Chef Nikki, I remember seeing her episode on Chef's Table, and I was blown away by this chef who was, you know, her story and her dedication and love and passion. And not only was she in a male-dominated industry, but especially from the Japanese culture in terms of cuisine. And so, you know, I was so floored by that. And yet on every season of Chef's Table, there was maybe one woman. And come to find out now years later, where, you know, I'm in the filmmaking industry, they're catching some slack for that, because it's like they're a bunch of white guys in Palo Alto or wherever, and maybe they don't have that extra perspective that they should. And nothing against them, because I love Chef's Table, but it's the point that representation and inclusion matter. And we, you know, for MAP, my campaign, our motto is, if you see it, you can be it. And it's so important. And I think we're all sort of talking about that today, because like my daughter tonight at the kitchen table over dinner, we were talking about it's election season. Do you know what that means? And she said, oh, well, who's the woman running for president? And, you know, and she's 6 years old. And I'm like, well, honey, actually there isn't. There is a woman vice president. This is what that's about, you know. And so it really matters from that young who they see, what the messaging is. And now I have to be honest, I can't imagine making series or shows where it's not woman focused, because to me, because I carry this lens and all these years I've been doing this and getting to meet so many incredible women in the industry, it's like I can't imagine not always sharing their stories. But, and the other thing I want to mention that's really important, because I've had the luxury now of this time to reflect, is when I first started out making this film, it was nearly impossible to get funding. And that's not shocking, right? Because any woman in any venture, it'd be more shocking to hear you did naturally get money sent your way. But what was shocking to me is that the response as to why, not, you know, because I was maybe a novice filmmaker, not because of what it was about. I could have literally made a film on saving ants or like saving whales or trees, anything, and I would have had a much easier time. It was the fact that it was on women chefs. And I'm saying this now because having spent so many years talking about this, about the issues behind this, not about this being about women chefs, but about what this is really about. We've had to force this conversation down people's throat to finally be having really meaningful and thoughtful dialogues on what we need to do. And it's been so needed, because now we're 6 years later and the numbers haven't shifted that much. So I think it's so important we talk about funding, we talk about all these other things, because like Elizabeth mentioned, why is it still happening to the extent that it is? You know, and the other thing is women supporting women, which we hear about, and it's not all on women to support each other, but that's what made the difference for me, and even finishing this film, was having so many women who said, I'll throw a screening party, or I'll throw, you know, something so we can raise money, you know, fundraisers. And that's how I did it. And Elizabeth Blau, who's on this panel, I give her so much props, because she brought us to Las Vegas and held an amazing screening event there, and started the Women Hospitality Initiative, which of course she'll talk about. But like, these are the change makers, and these are the people who are making all the difference. And I have to say that it was women who really carried us through at the end. And I'm really grateful for that.
That's awesome. Joanna, thank you very much for that answer. And you should be doing the moderating, not me, because you like segue beautifully into the next question I have, which is for Elizabeth Blau. Elizabeth, of course, CEO of Blau & Associates. Now, you've changed the entire food landscape for entire cities. And you've also been an outspoken advocate for women in business and the hospitality industry. So what will it take for women to fill the roles that they desire and are highly capable of accomplishing? Oh, sorry, we're gonna unmute you. 1 second. There we go. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a great question, and thanks for having me, Denise and Roy. I'm sorry I can't be there with you, but thrilled to be on this panel with all these incredible women. You know, there are a lot of things in play, and as Joanna said, her movie was so inspiring to me. Janice mentioned earlier that, you know, when I was rising in my career, you know, a lot of those things that we put up with just, you know, were part of, you know, the daily course of business. When I came to Las Vegas 22 years ago, I probably could write a whole book on all of the nonsense that was going on. But it's an incredible time, and times are changing now. And Joanna's film was so incredibly inspiring to me. I think Elizabeth Faulkner said it. I mean, so many times people ask me, well, what's it like to be a woman working in, you know, Las Vegas and this industry? And I thought, it's such a dumb question. I mean, I can't answer. I'm not a man. I only know, you know, from my perspective. And I've always just worked so hard as a entrepreneur, as a business person, you know, to get where I was in the industry. And so it really, I guess you hit a certain age. And, you know, when I watched Joanna's film, it was like a punch in the gut. And I thought to myself, well, you have passed the 50 mark. And so things aren't changing. They're not changing to the degree that we need them to. So it's probably time to take some action. And as Joanna mentioned, we started this Women's Hospitality Initiative almost, you know, about a year ago, Joanna, I think that we started talking, and I am so incredibly proud to announce that even though, you know, basically everything after we launched Joanna's film here in Las Vegas, the world completely shut down, we were able to join forces with UNLV, the University of Las Vegas, the Hospitality College, and the Culinary Institute of America. And so just last week, we launched a class that's called From the Classroom to the Boardroom, Leadership for Women in Hospitality. And the course is being jointly taught by two deans at both the schools. And really, the extraordinary thing is it's the first ever leadership class specifically for women in our industry. And what I learned from Joanna's film is that, you know, look, this isn't rocket science. If we've always been looking at this glass ceiling, and Sheryl Sandberg and McKinsey did a study, and they came up with this article about the broken rung, and that really women are not just falling behind at the glass ceiling, that really at entry level positions, that there's something about women entering the workforce where we're not, you know, providing, you know, enough materials, enough confidence, enough skills to advance. So my passion has always been with education. And so, you know, forming this course, and we already have 2 other hospitality schools around the country that are interested in getting involved, but, you know, making sure that in high school and in college, that women that are specifically going to pursue this this career path have those skills. You know, I think that you know, we can't change the past, and the Me Too movement has certainly opened up a lot of doors. But what we're trying to do with our movement is not about blaming, because again, we have to look to the future, and we need male allies. We need mentorship and advocacy and leadership, and we need men and women working together in partnership. That's what's going to change this paradigm. Because, you know, if we just look to the past, or we just blame, this is terrible men, it's not going to work. And so, you know, we've got to, you know, slowly change this paradigm. So I believe that, you know, having, you know, I've had great mentors, I've had great advocates in my career. And so whether they're male or female. You know, we've got to make sure that this next generation of women, you know, get that boost that maybe we didn't have. But I think that's what's going to change things. And I have to give a shout out to the youngest chef, little chef Ben Gordon, who is watching. I'm sending lots of love to Hawaii. Mahalo.
That's great. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I appreciate it. Ladies, we actually have a Q&A session that's going to be coming up in just a second. But before we do that, I've been asked to ask you one question. and you have like a minute to respond. So I apologize that we're going so quickly, but we want to make sure we get to these questions because we have like 99 plus questions that are being put up here that they want to ask you. We want to make sure we try to get to as many as possible. So I'll ask you each and we'll go around. If I could get one idea from you of a way that we can continue this fight for women's equality in the kitchen or outside the kitchen. And I'll start with Jackie. Jackie, do you have an idea? Something that you'd suggest? We need to unmute them. They haven't given me the power to do that because they're afraid. So. Okay, Jackie. Oh, no.
To be muted again. I guess one idea would, yeah, I mean, I kind of like the idea of just leaving your name off the you know, your resume or your, you know, your application. I mean, I think that people look at gender no matter what, but I feel like it's, I don't know how you necessarily get around it. I just feel like, you know, if you just show up and show what you can do, that should be good enough, you know, and I don't know what the answer is to that, but, you know, I like the leaving it off the application.
Okay, thank you very much, Jackie. We appreciate that. Chef Nikki, what about you? Do you have a suggestion?
I kind of like Jackie's idea a lot. I actually believe in blind tasting. I think there's like a symphony and orchestra in New York where they actually interviewed. The interview process was for the musician to play behind the curtain, and they found out that a lot of them that qualified were people that they never would have thought of would qualify, and most of the time they were women. So I would love to be able to just host an open house and have people cook, and then just decide at that moment who should cook for us. I think that would be amazing.
That's a cool idea. It's like The Voice, but with cooking.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. Clarice, how about you?
I think it's super important that we give visibility to the issue and continue to give visibility to the issue, not let it drop. You know, films and books and statistics and what Elizabeth's doing with the initiative, what the advocacy groups do. I think it's super important to just give transparency to it because it's never going to change if we don't.
Okay, thank you very much. Elizabeth Faulkner, what do you got for us?
You know, I think that we have to continue to be loud and repetitive to get our voices heard. I don't, whether it's in the restaurant business or in media or film, television. I think it's just going to take some of that. And sometimes our voices are a different kind of loudness. It's a different kind of sound. But I think we have to pay attention to that. And we also, as females, need to pay attention to the power in that, I guess, sort of more yin voice. And I really just think it's time for us to be more power, period.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Appreciate that. Okay, Janice, did you have a suggestion?
Well, coming from a place as a female food journalist, and again, not cookbook authors, because people tend to pigeonhole female food writers into cookbook authors, but as a journalist, I say be fierce, persist, use your voice, make sure you have your own voice. When you have a singular voice, you are heard. Be smarter, be the best, and honestly, never give up.
All right, that's great, terrific. Joanna, thank you very much for hanging with us. I know it's like, oh my gosh, it's like 12 o'clock at night where you are. So thank you for hanging with us here. Did you have a suggestion?
Yeah, the World Economic Forum says it's going to be 250 years before there's true equal pay. The wage gap is real, and if we're talking about equality, financial independence is true equality. So transparency, not only for names on resumes, but for salaries, and specific policies that will prevent more of this broken rung that is so real that Elizabeth mentioned, like paid family leave. The US is the only developed country that does not have paid family leave. And now with COVID, I think it's so clear. Imagine you don't have job security because you're taking care of your loved ones who's sick or you're having a baby. So these are the things that are going to make a difference for women across all industry, and especially in the restaurant industry where these things are so taken for granted, including fair wage. This is the stuff we really need to start talking about.
All right, thank you very much, Joanna. And finally, Elizabeth, you actually, during your answer, you kind of gave like 3 or 4 different things.
I'll come up with another one. You know, right now, I think it's so vital that we realize that we're advocating to save our entire industry. You know, the National Restaurant Association and other sources are quoting up to 85% of restaurants in America could be out of business. And that number sounds so incredulous, but every day it's like reading the restaurant obituary of our, you know, most favorite restaurants going out of business. Specifically for women, to me, it's all about confidence. And mothers and fathers, like, we've got to teach our girls at a very young age. We've got to instill that confidence. And so as they grow, as they mature, that confidence is what's, to me, going to be a game changer. But I hope that the landscape of our industry can survive this, because it is truly devastating.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I hope so too, because I can't cook. So I need to stay in business so that I continue to be fed. This time, before we get to our Q&A, what I'd like to do is let everybody know that Joanna has been gracious and extended the password for one more day for the film. So if you haven't had a chance to see it, please, I don't know how much more strongly I can tell you this, but avail yourself of that link. Watch this film. It will open your eyes in a way that you will be like, oh my gosh, I got to go to every single female-owned restaurant and go eat there. So, and you're going to want to go to her mom's restaurant, period. So once again, thank you, Joanna, for doing that. That was very gracious of you. But yeah, she's again extended that password one more day. So please take advantage of it. Go see A Fine Line. It's a very, very terrific movie. Okay, so now we've got our question and answer period. I actually have some questions here. This one, actually, we're going to start with Joanna. The question is, thank you for creating an engaging and inspirational film for women and men to learn from. Unfortunately, it is 2020, and we're still seeing the implicit bias and systemic barriers to women pursuing leadership and executive positions. Do you have any practical advice that you would give to up-and-coming female chefs and professionals to achieve their dreams?
Oh, am I off mute?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I've been so fortunate in the sense that I have this bird's eye view of the advice I'd give coming from so many women in the industry that I've had the fortune to sit with and hear or see what they've done to make it work. And I think number one, the most important advice is commitment. You know, how bad do you really want this? Because this is probably one of the hardest industries you're ever going to work in. It's also, I'm sure, one of the most gratifying and one that just is like, you know, the energy and the camaraderie and all the great things about it is amazing. But you know, it does come down to hard work. It does come down to sacrifice. And so I think you have to be really honest with yourself. And then, of course, as a woman coming up the ranks in this industry, you are going to always have to prove yourself. And I think in any industry but so you really have to be honest with yourself. And then you do have to build your confidence, just like Elizabeth said. If you don't believe in yourself and what you can do and put those visors on, that's what my mom says, you just put tunnel vision on and just focus on what you can do and what you want to accomplish. That's the way you're going to do it. So I think that's, the most important.
Thank you very much, Joan. I appreciate that. Ladies, I apologize. We've got about 10 minutes. So I'm going to try to whip through these questions as quickly as possible. We have one from Tiana Buck, and I'm going to direct it specifically to, to Jacqueline. Jacqueline, for all the young girls who are listening to this presentation, and I've been really impressed, but there's my coworker or my co-host, Esme Infante, her daughter is going to enter cooking. It's kind of been her thing. And so her teacher in college is saying, you have to watch this panel, which I think is really great. So you have all these young women who are just eagerly watching you guys and wanting to learn as much as possible. So for these young girls who are listening on the presentation, who are planning to be chefs or would like to work as a chef, what is the #1 piece of advice you'd give them to help them succeed and break the kitchen door?
Well, first of all, you need to love what you do. I mean, if you love to cook, you really have to love it, because it's hard and it's frustrating and it's long hours. And I'm a mother. I had sacrificed a lot for my job. And, did I necessarily have to do it? Maybe not, but, I felt that I needed to do what I needed to do. And I think if you have that determination and you put your head down and you're like, I can do this, you can make it happen. And, but first and foremost, love what you do and love to cook and love to take care of people, because it shows.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Jackie. Okay, Jean Suzuki has a question for Chef Nikki. Sushi has been taboo for women in the Japanese cuisine realm for generations. Was there a progressive sushi or a kaiseki chef whose mentorship you worked with to train and gain experience from, or did you sort of create this path?
I think in my time, because I've been doing this for a long time, I've had to create my own path. And I feel that even to this day, when it comes to the work that I do, I find that the most criticism I receive is generally falls in the line of sushi, because I think there's just a lot of, it's funny because I often question myself, like, oh, is my work not great? And then I ask my team and I ask people, and most of the time they're very supportive, and they think that what I'm doing in terms of sushi is really wonderful work. But then I think it always comes down to maybe that it's just a gender thing. I don't really know. I feel like when I eat my sushi and I eat somebody else's sushi and, somebody of the comparable level, and I feel that I don't see much of a difference. And then I know there are nuances that are different. But in terms of the sushi path, I've had to sort of create my own path and figure out ways to do it so that it matches me. And even today I was demonstrating how to cut a gigantic fish in the kitchen. And I was saying that I've had to find workarounds in it, because when you go into a traditional Japanese restaurant, maybe the male sushi chef will just, hammer it away. Whereas I don't have the physical strength to do that. But I understand fish anatomy enough to know where all the soft spots are. So if we're able to cut through using the soft spots and know where the anatomy of those things, it's like we make it work, because we just have to find the way. And I think that's just anybody who wants to do any kind of work in any field, male or female, you just have to try hard, and you have to find a way, and you can't give up if you believe in what you do.
Okay, thank you very much, Nikki. Oh, sorry, Chef Nikki. Charmaine Villegas has a question for Elizabeth. So she says, I've always found it ironic that the traditional role of women at home was to be the person in the kitchen, but in the restaurant world, apparently it's a weird thing, which is kind of something that you've all sort of touched on a little bit, but she finds it very strange. So what are your thoughts on that? Oh, sorry, Elizabeth Faulkner, excuse me.
Okay. Just wanted to check, because we could both answer that question.
Well, actually, you could pull that.
Well, I think that it's, the concept of the male being sort of the chef is a relatively new concept in the history of human beings. So, you know, I think that I've always, I mean, I said it in Joanna's film too. Like, I just, you know, everybody always wants to cook like female chef. So, and I love what Nikki just said about like just tackling the assignment, because there's a lot of different ways to approach any kind of cooking, and there's no right or wrong way, really. It just depends on the storytelling you've heard your whole life from your traditions or new concepts, and sometimes new concepts are actually old concepts. So now I totally forgot what the question is, but I just think that like it's I just think that women cook really well, so let's just pay attention to that.
Works for me. I love it. That's a great answer. We do have a question from Neens, and I'll address this to Janice. Janice, she says, Neens says she's a grateful eater of the food, the words, the thoughts. How might you suggest that she best support you?
How she best support me?
I think women as a whole, as you go through these hopefully changing times.
As food journalist, or just in women in the culinary field?
Women in the culinary field, yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
No.
How best to support us? Gosh, if we have restaurants, come get our food. You know, just think of us. I mean, I think this is also a time where it's not just women, but it's the LGBTQ community, IA community, it's the BIPOC community. I mean, so there's a lot of subgroups within women as well that need the support just as much as anyone else. So support the restaurants, buy the cookbooks from these women, you know, follow them on social media. There's some great influencers and people who are doing cooking shows, and on Instagram and Facebook and all sorts of media, and follow them, seek them out, find them and support them. And then they will grow in their field, and they'll be even better at what they do, and you will just help this field flourish.
Okay, thank you very much, Janice. Appreciate it. That was a great answer. This one is a question for Elizabeth Blau. Have you altered your management style because of how it may be perceived, simply because you're a woman in a position of power?
Theoretically, you would, but no, I don't think I have. I mean, I think that, you know, the stereotypes are, if a woman, you know, speaks her mind and is direct, and you know, that we're a bitch, and so, you know, that's just you know, a kind of something that follows us. I also happen to be 6'1" and flat feet, so you know, I guess size can be intimidating as well. But you know, I try and have a very direct style. I try and be, you know, true to myself. I try and treat others how, you know, I would like to be treated. And, you know, also I've learned from, you know, some extraordinary men in the industry. I started my career working for Sirio Macchione. I worked over a decade for Steve Wynn. So I've worked for some of the toughest guys in the business. So I also know how to hold my own. So I think, you know, women instinctively, you know, want to also show a compassionate side, but no, I think I'm just me.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Appreciate that. Clarice, I did have a question for you. If a woman wanted to get started in this business, is there the wine business? Is there something that you would suggest them starting with, a level that they need to begin with? I mean, because you can say, well, I'm really into wine, but it's you know, from jumping from that to being a sommelier or something like that, you know, it is a pretty big jump. And like you were saying, you know, women in this field are just not as prevalent. So did you have any suggestions for young
Yeah,
lady?
it really depends on what part of the industry you want to be in, winemaking versus, service of wine, or being actually an expert in types of wine and varietals and all that. Definitely the Court of Master Sommeliers has great programming, as do many hospitality schools. CIA here at Greystone has a wonderful program for, to get technical education, which really does matter because so much of wine is built on tradition from Europe. And so I found that fascinating, even though I've been around it for my whole life. I was so excited. And I only have the first level. There's like 3. I'm like the baby level of knowledge, but I remember sitting in the Western St. Francis for an entire weekend with flashcards. I haven't done that since college, just studying all these things. And it was so much fun to just have that knowledge and fuel the passion. So that's a great way to become sommelier. Obviously, working in the industry and having experience with wines, especially when you experience people drinking them and the connection that happens there and the passion both ways in the conversations. For winemaking, many people start out as a cellar rat, as we call it in the industry. And it's grueling work, but you learn a lot from the bottom up in terms of how wine is actually made. And it's, it's a lot of fun. It is definitely a lot of hard work. And then, just some of the entry level positions in wine country anywhere in the world will teach you a lot. And it is not for the faint of heart, the wine industry, by the way. We have a saying that people start out with a lot of money and wind up with a little. And that's very true, because Mother Nature is Mother Nature, and you just never know.
Okay, thank you so much, Clarice. Ladies, once again, mahalo for the questions to our audience and also to our speakers for sharing their experiences and insights. It's been really inspirational to hear these unique perspectives from each of you. And thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight. Now, if your question didn't get answered and you're here, stay tuned. We'll try to get them directly during the Pau Hana, which we're going to continue very shortly with live music from Taimane. And in just a second, we're going to go live on Facebook with Outrigger Resorts Kani Kapila Music Jam. Ladies, once again, thank you so very much for being here. It was awesome to be in your presence and to have you share your story. So mahalo for that.
Thank you. Yay.
Okay, and now we're going to transition, as they call it in the business, to our live music session, where we're going to be live on Facebook. Oh, okay, which is
Aloha and welcome. My name is Taimane. This is DJ Look, Miss Rachel Look, and we are here for Hawaii Food and Wine Festival, which we are definitely partaking in tonight. So cheers to Hawaii Food and Wine Festival. Yes, we wanted to share some music for you. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for your contributions to my PayPal and my Venmo. It's been hard times for us musicians right now, so thank you so much for donating. So at this time, we're gonna do some aerials. We're gonna do some System of a Down. We're gonna do some Led Zeppelin. We're gonna do some Beethoven, all on this instrument, which is called the ukulele, also known as the ukulele. And this instrument can really play anything. So this next song is going to showcase that. I hope you enjoy it. We'll start off with the Beethoven. All right, that song was called, well, that medley was called Aerials. It's been a while since we played that, hence the whole COVID. But very happy to be a part of Hawaii Food and Wine Festival with all of these amazing and boss ladies in the food industry, which I know is also having a hard time at these times. So make sure that you support these lovely ladies as well as us. I do believe I have a PayPal. Oh, right. Yes, I have a PayPal. And I'm also watching on my Facebook, the Outrigger Facebook. So I'm checking out your comments. So if you have anything you would like to share with us, by all means. At this time, we are going to do another cover for you. This is my favorite one. It's called The Wicked Game by Chris Isaac. I'm gonna get very melodramatic, very dreamy with this one. I hope you enjoy it.
Don't wanna fall
little Chris Isaac there for you called Wicked Game. I've got a couple more songs for you. This next one is a fun surf medley. So if you are in the States or all over the world wishing you were in Hawaii, I hope this next song kind of makes you feel like you're here. We're indoors. We're all in our houses. But thank you to Alice Reed. I just got your Venmo. Thank you so much. All of your contributions at the moment is really helping me pay for my rent. So thank you for that. My PayPal and my Venmo, I believe, is somewhere around. Just look for it. My name is Taimane. This is Rachel Look. And we're going to do the surf medley for you. Here we go. Oh, cheers, by the way, for Hawaii Food and Wine Festival. Cheers. haven't played in a long time, so that was over the top. But I want to say mahalo to Laura. I saw that you donated. Thank you so much for your love and your aloha and your money. Thank you. But we do have another song for you. This one I hope makes you feel like you're in Tahiti now. And it is sunset time and you're at a party and you're in the beautiful blue waters with your friends and you're just watching the sunset with your glass of wine. And this is an original. I'm working on a new album, as Devin said. And I just finished it in the recording studio. So this is super new. I hope you like it. Cheers to Outrigger Resorts. And I hope you enjoy this one. This one's called Bora Bora Sunset. Mahalo, Wendy. Lazy Mahalo, thank you so much for listening. This is Rachel Look. My name is Taimane, and thank you so much to the Hawaii Food and Wine Festival for having us. Have a wonderful evening. Aloha.
Aloha. Taimane, thank you so much. And once again, please make sure you Oh, and Rachel, hi. Make sure that you, I had this whole thing, Tamane, I'm supposed to say about you, and I never even got to any of it because you just start jamming, which is how Tamane works.
Sorry, yeah.
No problem. She's ready to go. I was gonna try and do, I was gonna try and hana you, but it's late already, so I don't want to do that to you. But if people do want to donate, how best to do that once again?
Yeah, they can, I have a PayPal and a Venmo. I'm sure the information is somewhere, but my Venmo is at Taimane. My website is taimane.com. And if that's hard to spell, just think ukulele woman and I will pop up on Google.
Now, with regards to the new album, sorry, can we give people a little bit extra? Like when do you think this might be coming out?
Well, I would say I give it one, maybe 2 years. It takes me 1 to 2 years, but all of this COVID time here at home has definitely given me time to go to the studio and work on it. So it's recorded. It's just now in the mixing phase, which normally takes like a year. So people can just chill out. I'm coming out with new merch in November. And then I do my own live streams as well.
When they catch you live, one of the cool things is you'll do stuff like this where you'll break out a new song that people haven't heard.
Yeah. That last one was a new one, and we've just been writing music, so we've got a lot of new music to share.
Yeah. Well, we are definitely looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Taimane. Rachel, you guys are awesome. Mahalo.
Thank you.
All right. Taimane joining us tonight for our Hawaii Food and Wine Festival. On behalf of the Hawaii Food and Wine Festival, mahalo for being part of this talk story, and Pau Hana. It's been amazing to hear from our female panelists, from our friends at Joseph Phelps Vineyards, from Taimane, of course, and Rachel, and also all of you. Thank you for joining us. You know, without you, these kind of things don't exist. Thank you to Denise and the whole gang. Oh, and don't forget, tickets go on sale on Saturday. I was gonna make Denise come over here and say this, but she doesn't want to. So. Tickets do go on sale this Saturday, and you would go to hfwf.com. Oh, Emmy, sorry. Okay, got it. HawaiianFoodAndWineFestival.com. Okay, good. We want to see you at the events. We'll probably do a couple more of these. Yeah. So please give us your suggestions. Keep glued to the website because we're going to let you know when the next one comes up. And oh, don't forget that. The seafood boil thing, because that looks amazing. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. We have one more giveaway too. My fault. I apologize. So we have a final giveaway. It is one random attendee who's going to win a ticket and seafood kit for 2 to the cook and drink along. So yeah, that seafood boil I was talking about, you get one of those babies for free. This is going to be HFWF on October 1st, okay? And the lucky winner is Rachel Smith. Yay, Rachel. She's screaming at her computer right now. You'll be contacted with the details in the next few days. So congratulations, Rachel. Enjoy. Please, once again, stay tuned for more information coming soon from the Hawaii Food and Wine Festival. Have a wonderful evening, and don't forget to catch me and Esme on the Rise and Drive on 94.7 Kumu. Till we see you again, aloha no, ahoy ho.
Yeah, good job.